Hello, my name is Angeles, and today I will be presenting on which which set of composers I was more drawn to. Personally, I was more drawn to Beethoven, Schubert, and Schumann. I think the characteristics of Romanticism in general just attract me. Personally, I find the individuality of style and the emphasis on this kind of self expression through your piece is very important because as a writer, I feel like I'm speaking through what I'm writing. So yeah, the expressiveness of this and also like the set of unpredictability that goes on. So like for example, when Franz Schubert was writing this poem that just like struck him out of nowhere and he just knew he needed to write that. I resonate very much with that kind of emphasis on this expressiveness and the subject and the time and when you need to write the piece. I think the colorful harmony is also very beautiful and it allows for a sense of greater emotional intensity. So when the piece is being presented through the instruments or through the harmonies or through whatever it may be, I think that everything that's going on and because you were allowed this individuality of style, now you like create this colorful harmony that they created and it just sounds beautifully. Another thing that is probably my favorite is the characteristic of program music. So the idea of creating a poem and then like bringing it to life in a sense through music is very close to me. So I write poems, I'm part of a writers group, I do all of these things. And personally, I just feel like there's this just sort of fascination with seeing your pieces brought to life. I personally don't do it through music, I do it more through like slam poetry and things like that. But I think this characteristic kind of just embodied what they were really trying to convey. Characteristics that really don't resonate with me are more like classical ideals. So just kind of having a balance and this sort of elegance to a piece, like I feel like it takes away a lot of the individuality of style that I was talking about. Another thing is like the amount of structure that needs to be put into the piece, and I just there's this sort of thing where not just with the individuality, but I think it takes away from the intimacy and the spontaneity to have a structure to it. Of course, there's still a sort of emotional intensity being felt by it, but I feel like this structure kind of like boxes it into something and it doesn't allow for like full self expression of the composer, and it's just personally not for me. So my character, I personally would like to talk about the Erlkönig by Franz Schubert. So, some characteristics that we can see here are, so like I said, he just kind of got this inspiration and spontaneity out of nowhere. But the extreme emotion and intensity the music is subjected to is honestly fascinating and beautiful. So when he's like crying out, my father, like that intensifies it through like these dissonant harmonies that you hear in the background. And I think you can just feel how the piece was being brought to life in that instance. Another another characteristics is the amount of intimacy in the piece and how different it is every time to properly explain the individuality of said intimacy. So it's kind of like he created this fantasy world and now he's just bringing it to life. So, like it ends and the father and the son arrive home and the galloping halts. And I just think through this piece, like this is personally the piece that most resonated with me because it showed me how I would want a piece of mine to be presented if it were to be presented through music. And I think that's what I loved most about Beethoven, Schubert, and Schumann, that they just kind of brought their pieces to life in a different sense that I had never really thought about. And finally, My personality is more in line with the romantic era. Like I stated earlier, the classical era and this like balance and structure and proportion and this elegance and clarity to all my thoughts, like that's just not usually what my personality is more in touch with. I'm more like intense and emotion and I like act, and of course there's parts of my life that I have to structure, but not everything is structured. And I feel like even if my personality is seen as classical, my heart is truly like romantic and intense and just like in this fantasy world. Thank you. That's all.